Hey guys, this is test 61 game 3. This is the women's track team meet game. It's an ordering game because we got the 5 people, QRSTU, and we're placing them in order of their races 1 through 4. Now I've laid out a lot of stuff here. I'm going to explain all of it. We got the rules that, if we have Q, then we have QT occurring consecutively in that order. We've also got the rule that if we don't have S in either 2 or 4, so I put not S under 2, not S under 4. They tell us that if we don't have U, then we have R second, and then they tell us after that if we have R2, then we don't have U second, giving us a double arrow here. So I also put down the contrapositive of that. If we have U, then we must not have had R second, because having R2 requires not having U. So this is all, the initial rules of the game, very bare bones main diagram. We can actually make several different main diagrams for this game. If you've got 5 people and 4 of them are chosen, that means that one of them is always going to be out. So I would make 5 different main diagrams based upon the idea of who is going out, because you've got to know who's actually being selected before you can place the people in this order. So I actually consider this game, a combination of an in-out game, also known as selection, because we got 4 people chosen from the pool of 5, and then we're placing the 4 chosen people in order. So I actually do think that making 5 different quick main diagrams based on who is out would actually not be that bad. So one diagram with Q out, one with R out, etc. I'll show you what I mean. So Q out, R out, S out, T out, and U out, and then I've written to the side who is in as a result. So if Q's out, obviously the other 4 in, etc., all down the line. Now we know that whenever we have Q, we will have to have both Q and T. So this diagram right here, the 4th one with T out, ends up being irrelevant. It's impossible to have T be the guy that's out, given that when we have Q, we will have Q and T both in that order consecutively, of course. So we're actually only dealing with 4 diagrams, it turns out. Now, we know that in the other remaining diagrams, when we have Q, we actually have T. So I'm going to put down next to the relevant ones just to remind us, in this diagram, we've got QT. In this diagram, we've got QT. And in this diagram, we've got QT. So in those diagrams, we've got QT in for certain. Now, keep in mind also that we've got this other rule here. When we have U, R can't be second. So in this diagram, R can't be second. And in this diagram, since U is in, also, R can't be second. Obviously, in this one here, it's irrelevant due to the fact that R has to be out. And this one is not activated due to the fact that U is out. And we know that when U is out, R has to be second. Therefore, in this diagram, we have to have R on 2 for certain. Now, we've also got to have QT in a box, meaning in that order consecutively in this diagram. So over here, we've got to have Q on 3 and T on 4, given that there's no other place we could fit that. And then that means that since we've dealt with R, Q, and T, that means that S is left to go on 1. So this diagram actually becomes fully fleshed out, leaving no ambiguity at all. The other diagrams are a bit more open-ended. We can't do too much with them, but we'll do more over the course of the game. Anyway, let's get into question number 12, which is, a typical orientation question. We've got our 4 people for each choice. We'll just work by elimination using one rule at a time. So whenever we have Q, we've got to have QT occurring consecutively in that order, and we find that choice C violates this, having Q, yet not having QT. So for that reason, C is gone. Next, we could use the rule that S is never on 2 or 4 anywhere. So scanning through the choices there, we see that choice B violates this, having S on 2. We could also use the rule that when we have, U, we do not have R on 2. Scanning through the choices, looking for violations there, choice A has U, yet does have R on 2. That's unacceptable, so A is gone, and we're down to D and E. Of course, choice D was okay with that because we had U, yet did not have R on 2. So down to D and E, we could use the rule that when we do not have U, we have to have R on 2. Choice E lacks U, yet does not have R on 2, unacceptable, so E is gone, leaving D for number 12. Next, number 13, who has to be selected? Now, we knew that the T out diagram was invalid because we just couldn't make it work given the Q requiring QT rule. Therefore, T can never be out. It has to be in, so D is our answer for 13. Next, number 14, what would fully determine the order, leaving no ambiguity at all? So they're asking us, what would fully determine it. We know that, R on 2 activates a rule. When R is on 2, U is out, and when U is out, we've got the fully defined order SRQT. Therefore, R on 2 fully determines everything, and B is our answer for 14. Next, number 15, general cannot be true question. You could scan through the choices, seeing if you've ever seen any of these things before. We actually saw choice C, S immediately before T. Back in question 12, choice D, we had S immediately before T. Therefore, we know that it's possible to have that, and C can be eliminated. After that, there's really not much to do other than run through the choices. So looking at A, R immediately before S. So could that work? Well, we can never have S on either 2 or 4. So if that were to happen, it would have to happen with R on 2 and S on 3. And we know that R on 2 requires U to be out, and U out happens only right here in this diagram, SRQT. But we don't have that happening with R immediately before S. We have S immediately before R there. Therefore, having R immediately before S does not work because that requires U out, and U out requires SRQT. So they're not compatible. Therefore, A is impossible, and is our answer to 15. Next, number 16. If U was on 1, what must be true? So obviously when U is out, that's not happening, so this diagram is irrelevant. We've got the other 3 here left to deal with, and we know that U being in at all requires R to not be on 2. So we could put U on 1 in each of these diagrams and see what happens. So in these two, we've got to have QT occurring. So QT could happen on 2, 3, or QT could happen on 3, 4. So I'm making 2 different possibilities here. And then S remains, of course. S could only be on 2 or 4 in this diagram. That's not going to work. Therefore, the R out diagram is irrelevant. When we have U on 1 over here, again, we've got the QT thing remaining, and then I've got to go consecutively in that order. So again, we could have QT on 2, 3 versus QT on 3, 4. S is out altogether here, so not a big deal. R is remaining. R can't go on 2. Therefore, the RQT possibility on 2, 3, 4 is irrelevant. We've got QTR on 2, 3, 4 here. Then in this top diagram, again, Q is out here, so we've got some ambiguity. We've got RST remaining. S can't be on 2 or 4. Therefore, S has to be on 3 in this case. R can't be on 2. Therefore, R is on 4, leaving T to be on 2. So we've got 2 possibilities here, UTSR or UQTR. Let's run through the choices to see what must be true. So Q does not run, happens on top but not on bottom. Therefore, A is not a must and is eliminated. S does not run, happens on bottom, not on top though, so B is eliminated. Q runs second, happens on bottom but not on top. Therefore, C is gone. T runs second, happens on top, not on bottom, so D is gone, leaving E by elimination. And if you look at E, R on 4 happens in both the top possibility and the bottom possibility. Therefore, R on 4 is a must, since those were the only 2 valid scenarios for this question. Next, number 17. If Q and S run, how many different people could be the person who goes on 1? So if Q and S are running, obviously the bottom diagram is relevant here. The top one is not, since Q out wouldn't allow Q to run, and S out wouldn't allow S to run. So both of those are relevant. We're only looking at R out and U out as our 2 possibilities here. So bottom diagram fully determined. We know S could be the person who goes first, since we know this is a valid diagram. So we've got S in the running to be one of the people who goes first. Then we've got, this possibility here where we have to satisfy QT. So there are really, 2 different ways that this can go, given that S can't be on 2 or 4. We could make one diagram where S is on 1 and another diagram where S is on 3, or we could do this based on where QT goes, meaning QT on 1, 2, 2, 3, or 3, 4. So I'll do it based on QT just to pick something here. So 3 different possibilities regarding the placement of QT. So on the top possibility, I'll put QT on 1 and 2. Second possibility, I'll put QT on 2 and 3. And the third possibility, I'll put QT on 3 and 4. Now, since U is in, we know R cannot be second. So therefore, I'm going to put R not on 2 here. The bottom possibility, you see, doesn't work out because we have, R and S remaining. We could put actually, maybe we could put S on 1 and then put U on 2. Does that work out? SUQT? Well, let's see. We got U in. R is not on 2. That's good. We're satisfying the QT rule. We got everything checks out, so SUQT works, but we've already got S there, therefore this is not relevant or not useful here. In the possibility where Q is on 2 and T is on 3, we could have S on 1, and then we could have U on 4. Again, that's putting S on 1, not giving us an additional variable, but could Q on 1 work? If Q on 1 works, the answer is 2. If it does not work, the answer to this question is 1. We could have S on 3 and then have U on 4. That checks out. So our possibilities are S, R, Q, T, and then our other possibility is Q, T, S, U. That works out fine. Of course, S, Q, T, U worked. I'll put that down as well just to be comprehensive here. And then we also had S, U, Q, T. So obviously, S and Q are the two things here that are relevant. We got S, we got Q, therefore our answer to this question is 2, choice B.